Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Pro Soccer Talk. I'm your host, Joe Prince-Wright, over here in England. Delighted to say we're joined, as always, by Nick Mendola in Buffalo, New York. There he is, and Andy Edwards in Kansas City. Great to see you guys, as always. And guys, we got a special guest this week. DaMarcus Beasley is our first ever guest on Pro Soccer Talk, which we're very, very excited about. So he's going to be joining us very soon indeed. But Nick, firstly, how are you? How was your weekend? How are things going? A big week, right, in the international scene. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. Massive week for the USMNT.
Yeah, not to stress out much, but this is one of those things, especially having a birthday recently, where I think, I only get to go through so many World Cup cycles in my life. So I start to really amplify how I need the U.S. to do. I have an Italian World Cup in my back pocket. I've seen Hungary do decent at a tournament. I need the U.S. to deliver me a memorable occasion.
No pressure. No pressure. The Impolitic and Co. Andy, how about you, mate? I know as well. Stakes are high, right, for the US this week. We expect them to get through and get the job done, but it's never that easy a World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, not to stress anymore or put any more pressure on, but 2,821 days it's been since the U.S. lost to Belgium in the 2014 World Cup, since the last time the U.S. was in the World Cup. Obviously, everybody remembers what happened 4 years ago, and so it's 8 years in the making. This week coming up, these final 3 games of World Cup qualifying, I guess that is pressure. That is real pressure and real stress, and hopefully they can get it over the line this week.
Well, we've got the perfect person to join us today then to talk about this. He played the last time the USA were at the World Cup. DaMarcus Beasley is joining us. Welcome, DaMarcus. Thanks so much for your time. Firstly, how are things in Houston, mate? You've been very busy there with the World Cup bid, and we're all keeping a close eye on that. But how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. First off, I heard I'm the first guy on the show. I'm the first one on the show.
Yeah. Honored.
I'm honored. No, I'm honored. I'm honored that you guys chose me to be the first guy on the show. So thank you. Appreciate it. I appreciate you guys letting me join you guys today. So
no, it's just brilliant. We've been looking forward to this for so long, DaMarcus. So, I mean, again, I could list off all of the stats, 7th all-time for appearances for the USA.
No, we don't need that.
All-time in goals. I mean, does that get boring? Because for me, that would never get boring if I was.
I wouldn't say boring, but it's cool. Obviously, when you leave the game, you reflect a little bit more of what you did in your career. And to be honest, when I did retire, a lot of it I didn't even remember. People were telling me things that I did, and I had no idea. So it's good to reminisce and to reflect, on your career after you stop playing, and hopefully now that I can make new memories.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, DaMarcus, as we were prepping for this, about when you came into everybody's kind of collective consciousness back in the 2002 World Cup and burst onto the scene with that team and that run in that tournament, and it dawned on me that was 20 years ago. One, when did we get so old? And two, what do you remember now that you have 20 more years of life experience and a whole entire career, that you played out afterwards that really sticks out to you from that time of your life?
Oh man, that first game was incredible. For me being the youngest guy on the team, I was kind of on the bubble with the national team and at that age, but I had a really good Gold Cup that year, and just kind of went on form. And I remember pretty much everything in 2002. You did say it's 20 years ago, but you don't forget the World Cup. You don't forget little things that happen. I still remember the trips we took, through South Korea. My roommate Landon Donovan. We had time off. We got to see the city a bit. So it wasn't just about about football and the matches. Obviously, that was a hugely important part of it. But you get to see a little bit of the culture that you're in, and that's why for me, living in Houston. We fast forward 20 years, and I'm in Houston, and being a part of this bid, part of the World Cup committee bid in 2026 for Houston is incredible. I got a chance to play in it. Now I'm on the other side, trying to do what I can to help Houston get a bid for the World Cup match, because it'll be huge for the city. It'll be huge for soccer in general, and I just think for all the fans involved.
So how's that going then, DaMarcus? Can you tell us about that? Because obviously you're on the board of directors. That there's a decision we expect in the next few months on the 10 host cities in the US. There's been visits by FIFA, so there's a lot going on. You're a busy man there in Houston. How's it been for you? What's the situation in Houston right now with the 2026 World Cup bid?
Yeah, it's been great. It really has. You know, I'm one of I'm on the board of the committee, and you know, the first time Chris Kennedy, the president of the Houston World Cup committee board, called me and said, "Hey, we would like you to be a part of the committee." And I was like, "Okay, but what does that really mean?" You know, but no, you know, Houston has given me so much this last 8 years. Obviously, I played 5 years. 5.5 years with the Dynamo, but Houston has grown on me. You know, the city is vibrant, is diverse. The culture is, you know, it really does believe football. You know, if you look at any of the matches that have been played here, international matches, they're always a sellout. You know, the crowd is electric. You know, so for me, any way I can to help, you know, get us a World Cup, get the World Cup here in Houston. I'm happy to do. So whatever that is, if that's, you know, sitting here talking to you guys or or anything of that nature, I'm willing to help, and Chris knows that, you know. So I'm really honored to be a part of the World Cup committee bid.
And DaMarcus, you've played at a number of huge places, but what occurs to me is you were kind of close to home, right? You're from Fort Wayne, Chicago, close enough to home when you play there. By the time you come back, having stopped in Glasgow and Manchester and all these places, and now you're in Houston, so that experience had to frame just how far MLS had come, but what being in a club had been. So what can you tell us about the impression that Houston made after being where you had been?
I mean, since the first day, this is honest. Since the first day I got to Houston, the hospitality of everyone was incredible. Not from my teammates, but from everyone. You know, just the city, everyone involved. You know, trying to get me as comfortable as I could, and really, you know, engulfed in the culture and engulfed in the city. That was one thing about me throughout my whole career. When I was in Germany and Scotland and wherever I was, Holland, I'm not a sightsee guy. You know, I'm not a big sight. I don't really kind of go around, just go look at sites, take pictures. I like to just sit in cafes and people watch. You know, I like to, you know, engulf what's the best thing that, you know, the culture is in that place I'm at. So that's, you know, what I did in Houston. You know, I love being out and about. The food here is incredible. So I love going to different restaurants. But Houston as a city, you know, even without the football part, it feels like a home because everyone helps out. Everyone, you know, it's kind of like a small big city because everyone knows everybody. You know, so Houston is home now. You know, I really enjoy being here. I enjoy my time, and you look at from, you know, Fort Wayne coming to, and then now coming to Houston. And we look at it as in a football way. You know, what they've done, you know, here, what they've built is truly remarkable. I think just because of, you know, the team has been successful, you know, a lot of it in the past, but now I think with the new ownership group and, you know, a couple of new signings they've had, I think they're getting back on track of what they've built in 2005 and 2006. And, you know, I was happy to be a part of it for six years. This is, like I said, this is home now. And you know, I think Houston is a perfect place to host World Cup matches.
DaMarcus, we're almost 4 years now into the head coaching tenure of, and I was reminded of this week as well, a teammate of yours from the 2002 World Cup, Greg Berhalter, as head coach of the U.S. men's national team. How do you kind of see, I guess, the program and where it is right now? Obviously, you were pretty up close and personal in 2017 when what happened, and it was time for a bit of a revolution or a changing of guard, a changing of ideas. You know, where do you see this team is at going into these final 3 games, hopefully the World Cup later this year? And kind of, I guess, what is your what's your overall hope for what this team could do in 2022?
Yeah, my first of all, I think it was the right thing to do, to change not the program, but move in a different direction. You know, I think it was time for older statesmen like myself, because obviously I was on the bench in 2017 when we lost to Trinidad. I think it was the right thing to do. I think it was time to, you know, inject some new blood into the system. I think right now, I think Greg is the right man for the job. You see in different parts of games, his style, his philosophy, it shows and it comes out. Obviously, as a fan, I'm a fan just like you guys. As a fan, do I want to see that more and sustain it for more time? Of course, but it's football and it's going to take time. A lot of these players, we keep saying they are young, but it's one thing playing in Chelsea and Barcelona, but when you come to the national team, it's different, and they're going to take time. It's going to take time them getting used to, and I think they've done a tremendous job getting this far. They're right at the cusp of qualifying for the World Cup, and I support them 100%. I hope in my lifetime one day I can see the U.S. men's national team win a World Cup like our women do. I think another thing. I think how great would it be if the Houston could host the U.S. men's national team here in Houston for a World Cup match? That would be incredible for me, for my family. I just think that right now I think Greg is the right man for the job, and the team is moving in the right direction.
And DaMarcus, you mentioned there about hosting the US in Houston. What do you think are some of the advantages it perhaps has over the competitors for other cities bidding for games? Because you look at NRG Stadium, obviously has a roof. We all know in the US in the summertime with storms and whatnot. That's probably a good advantage to have that time of year. And also just the soccer culture. Can you maybe pitch to us if we're FIFA and we want to come to games? Give 30 seconds. Why should Houston have World Cup games, and what advantage does it have?
Oh man, 30 seconds. All right.
On the clock.
I think as soon as you walk, this is what I said before. As soon as you walk in and get off the airport in Houston, from the transportation from the airport to the hotel to the stadium, it's world class. And I think the accommodations that we have in Houston is second to none. You look at the international matches that's been played here, the vibrance of the stadium, the people, the culture. We bleed football in this city, and I think anyone will see that, and anyone will walk away from World Cup matches in Houston thinking that this was the best atmosphere I've ever been in.
Wow. You've sold me. I'm coming. Big things going on. Obviously, Hector Herrera coming in, Houston Dynamo. It seems like just a great time for soccer in Houston. So we wish you the best of luck with that. That's going to be an incredible experience, and we'll put our fingers crossed for you, DaMarcus.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Switching gears to the USMNT. Obviously, we talked about the World Cup hopes there. What do you think they can achieve if they do qualify for the 2022 World Cup? Because I think we've all got our mind on, obviously, the Mexico game coming up and the final qualifiers. But there's almost, for this young group, right, 2022 is the first goal. And then 2026, it seems, is the main target. We really want to do well there. But what do you think they can achieve if they do make it to 2022, DaMarcus?
Obviously, the smart way to start this is that it depends on who they get in their group. To be honest, it does, that means a lot, but I think they can do well, and I kind of combine that with how we were in 2002. And in 98, the U.S. team finished dead last. No one were thinking that we're going to do anything in the 2002 World Cup. A lot of teams and even the media, just kind of wrote us off. So there was no pressure on us. There was nothing to lose. We just went out there and played. I think we had a really, really good squad. Don't get me wrong, but playing against Figo and Conce Chao and Rui Costa that first game, I think people knew that we were there to win and to really put our mark in world football. So I think it can kind of be that same, teams kind of taking them lightly and they know who they play for, but still, still USA. And I think until we kind of, have that consistency where we're competing at World Cups and getting to quarterfinals every World Cup, it's going to be that way. So I think, I think they can surprise some people in 2022. And a lot of it is because we didn't qualify in 2018. So, once they get to Qatar or Qatar, however you guys want to say it, I think they're going to surprise a lot of people.
DaMarcus, I go back to your team in the tournament you talked about, because for me, that took me from, man, I'd really like the U.S. to do well, to look what we can do. My expectations are raised. Beating Mexico on a stage so big, and so it was such a profound moment for me that I went from man, I can't wait to see how the U.S. does. And then, I hope Italy wins the World Cup too. It dares you to dream. It opens doors for you. And to be sitting here 20 years later and, credit to guys like you and Claudio Reyna for making those initial treks, and like every goalkeeper in American history who opened ourselves up to the pool. But now you look, and it's a whole darn team. I mean, there are guys, there's an 11. You can make an argument for that. There's a list of 11 players left off that might qualify. That's how deep it is. So what is the talent pool combined with the expectations your teams achieve done to tell you and inform you about 2022 and 2026 even?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The talent that we have right now is crazy. We haven't had that amount of talent at once in the national team. It hasn't happened. Yeah, we've had some great players. Still some of the best, top 5 players back in the day of all time. But to have it in abundance, that's different. And it's like I said, it's great to be a fan and see these kids grow and to see them week in and week out at their clubs. But when they come back to the national team, you're starting to see now they understand what it means to play for your country. And that's great. That's great to see, because sometimes it's not always about football. You got to have that bite, that extra, extra passion you have for playing for your country. And I think they have that. So, yeah, man, it's great to see. I'm really excited to see what they can do now and in the future. But it's great. I missed them. They're here in Houston training. They're training at the Houston Dynamo sports park. I didn't get a chance to see him, but yeah, you see, like, the U.S. national team's already in Houston, so I think it's a sign. Yeah. They train here in Houston before Mexico. We hope we can get them in for the World Cup in 2026. It all can come together. It all can come together.
Yeah. We're a few days to U.S. Mexico. What can you say about U.S. Mexico, DaMarcus, that hasn't been said, I guess, already a million times before, or maybe something, I guess, that just sticks out in your mind? Because for me, anytime I think of it, I think immediately back again to 2002 in that World Cup.
Yeah, there's not really much else to say, man, to be honest. You guys have seen the games. You've seen the players that came through on both sides. Sometimes there's not a lot of football being played. That's what it is. Sometimes you got to grind out wins. But Azteca, that's a different beast. I'll be honest. But I think with that, these young, if you look at the team, these young players, they don't have no fear. They have zero fear. Doesn't matter where they're playing or who they're playing against. They'll know they're playing in Mexico, but at the same time, they're going to go out there to try to win the game. And I'll be honest, it hasn't always been that way. We want to get a draw, kind of, park the bus a bit and let them come and absorb pressure and hit them on a counterattack. But I think now, with Greg and how he wants to play, like I said, honestly, I think they know they're playing in Mexico. They know it'll be tough that first 20 minutes when you can't breathe because of the altitude. But after that, if they can weather that storm, I think they can really play some good football and, create some good chances. And you never know. But, there's not much to be said, more with the rivalry USA-Mexico. We hope for a win, and hopefully they can get one Thursday.
DaMarcus, as the only player on the men's national team to play at 4 different World Cups, have you got any favorite moments, mate, in terms of qualifying for one, or maybe CONCACAF and how that worked out over the years qualifying, or maybe just the tournament itself, something that really stood out to you and maybe a great story?
Yeah, from the first World Cup is my best memory. Being the youngest player, I remember walking in the tunnel, and over to my right, there's Luis Figo. I'm like, where am I right now? I was literally thinking, but for me, that was one of my best moments of my life. Representing your country at a World Cup, and then winning, obviously. That was the icing on the cake. But for me, that was my best memory. It wasn't a goal. It wasn't, something crazy. It was just literally standing there in that tunnel, knowing I'm about to walk out into a World Cup match. It's truly incredible for kids that, they dream and want to be a professional soccer player. That's our, that's our mecca. That's our ticket. So to be able to do that at that age was truly incredible.
And DaMarcus, switching gears to your European career, and you came over here to the UK and obviously elsewhere in Europe to play. That was incredible to see you do it at PSV, Rangers, Manchester City. I mean, you're the second highest American goal scorer in Champions League history. We could go on and on with these records, mate. You've got so many. What do you think about those clubs, your former clubs, how well they're doing in Europe? Some of them, because yes, they're having a good season, right? They're all still in European.
They're all still in Europe. PSV, except for Hanover, but yeah, PSV, Man City, and Rangers. They're all still in it. They're actually all playing really good football at the moment. But yeah, I watch all of them. I'm still a fan of those teams. I still have a couple of friends there as well in each city. But yeah, I love my time in Europe. When I was in Chicago, I knew they knew that I wanted to play in Europe and test myself and try to make it as a professional footballer in Europe. That was my goal, and I got to live it for a while. But yeah, I enjoyed my time. I know sometimes I didn't play as much as I wanted to, injuries, out of form, but you can never take away the memories that I have from the people I've met and from the games that I played in. Those times in my career were truly special.
It's like in some cases, like you targeted some of the best rivalries you could possibly play for too. Because, in looking and getting ready, I'm like, wow, great record against Ajax. Like played in a Manchester derby against Ronaldo and Scholes and Giggs and Ferdinand. That's cool, right? And then obviously Celtic Rangers is maybe my favorite rivalry in the world. So I always wonder with guys like yourself who are in demand and they wind up on multiple of those clubs, do you end up feeling the same kind of hatred for the rivals? Like, do you carry that with you when you're watching Man United or Celtic?
Yeah.
You're like, I hope those bums lose.
Yeah, 100%. I still do. I don't watch. I mean, with all due respect to Celtic, obviously, but I don't watch Celtic. Every once in a while, I'll tweet something about Rangers. There's a couple of Celtic fans in my mentions, and trying to get me riled up about something. It happens. It comes with the territory. But yes, I have. I wouldn't say hate, but I strongly dislike any of those other teams when it comes to rivalries and derbies. Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I'm the first one to watch. When Man City plays Man U or Rangers play Celtics, something like that. And it's the same with USA Mexico. Same. I played in Mexico for 3 years. And I've made a lot of met and still have a lot of amazing friends. From my time in Puebla. But when it's USA Mexico, there's my daughter was born in Mexico, but there's no love for me when the USA plays Mexico, not even a little bit, but I think about that now that I'm talking about Mexico, USA, we're talking about the World Cup. Like, how great would it be for USA to play Mexico in Houston?
You are on message.
I'm serious. I love it. How great would that be? I mean,
that would be incredible.
It would be incredible. I mean, the Hispanic culture here in Houston is real. It's a lot. I mean, I think with the signing, you mentioned it earlier with Ache, with him coming in the summer, like I said, they're slowly piecing the pieces together, get back to their, what they were founded and built on in 2005, 2006. So the culture here and the Hispanic culture is huge. And I think if that game was played in NRG in Houston in 2026, that would be a phenomenal atmosphere.
It really would be. It'd be like everything coming together, right, to celebrate soccer in the US. And so, as we said earlier, how far it's come over the last 20, 30 years since you started playing and since MLS started. And now look at us now. It's, the World Cup's coming back around, and it's going to be really interesting. DaMarcus, wanted to ask you, as a part owner of Fort Wayne, in your hometown, you're obviously very invested in all levels of the American soccer pyramid. And what is your dream for the future of this sport in the USA? I mean, looking to the 2026 World Cup and beyond it as well, what kind of legacy would you hope that's left and perhaps that you've left in the game as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. for me, with, my club in Fort Wayne, and it's special to me, obviously, because I'm from Fort Wayne, and, it's a new club. We're trying to build something, special, something real. We want to be involved, and we want to be a club that, kind of, say that we were a part of one day winning a World Cup. That's what this is. We want to develop players. We want players to, inspire to play in a World Cup and to win a World Cup. And I do think it'll happen. But it takes all of us. It takes, the little Fort Waynes, teams in Albuquerque or, everywhere, California and Pittsburgh. It doesn't matter where, to develop these kids in the right way and in the mindset that, hopefully one day, we can, lift a World Cup together. And I think, for me and, what I do in Fort Wayne is not just about the dollar bill. I want to make sure we're opening up, soccer, football, to everyone. I want this sport to be, enjoyable to everyone. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like. That for me would be incredibly special. If I can do a little bit of that here and sprinkle that around, I think that would be something remarkable from Fort Wayne FC.
It truly would. And I just want to say on behalf of all of us, thanks so much for being our first ever guest on ProSoccerTalk.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for all the remarkable work you're doing at all levels of soccer in the US. We're huge fans of yours. We loved watching you play. We love what you're doing now, DaMarcus. And it's been a true honor. So please join us again soon.
For sure. Thank you. Love being on.
All right. Amazing. Okay, well, DaMarcus Beasley is clearly the nicest bloke in the game, and we could talk to him all day long, and he'll definitely be joining us again soon. So that was so much fun having a absolute US men's national team legend joining us to talk all things World Cup qualifying, the bid in 2026, and pretty much everything else. What a great guy. Let's switch gears now and focus on US men's national team at Mexico. Let's preview it at the Azteca. The level on points in qualifying heading into this game. Andy's already rubbing his hands with glee. USA second in CONCACAF qualifying, but I said level on points with Mexico sitting third. Andy, I'm going to come to you first. What do you expect from this game? Because it's been a weird one to kind of judge, right, in the last few years. So what do you expect?
I think DaMarcus put it perfectly. He said sometimes there's not a lot of football going on. There's a lot of extracurriculars. There's a little bit of jostling going on. There's a lot of gamesmanship that comes into these U.S.-Mexico games. And so I think the fact that this young group, because we've said that a million times over the last handful of years, they've been through these games a couple of times. They played through a really big one last summer in the Nations League final. Then they had Mexico at home during World Cup qualifying. So they've been through that a little bit. And so what I really want to see from this game coming up on Thursday, and obviously all three of the final games to close out World Cup qualifying, is I want to see that growth and progression from the experiences that this team has had over the last couple of years since World Cup qualifying began, since they got back to playing competitive games kind of post-pandemic and post being in that 2018 World Cup lull where they were just not involved. And so this is really kind of the culmination. And I was joking a little earlier when I said, 2,821 days, this is what we've been waiting for. But it really is true. It is all culminating up to this week and these next 7 or 8 days where we're going to find out if this team goes to the World Cup or not.
I'm thinking about this. The US has never won at Mexico World Cup qualifying. Nick, can they do it? Because this would be a huge step for this young side. As Andy mentioned, they've beaten them in recent games on home soil, but this is different, right?
Yeah, well, think about it this way. Considering we have a World Cup ahead, there are some uneven things to consider when it comes to the future of Greg Berhalter. If this team goes there and wins, whatever happens, if he mangles the World Cup, if they lose every other game, the one thing he'll be able to say is he never lost to Mexico. I mean, he's beaten them in 3 competitions, right? So I don't think they've lost in this decade. Granted, it's 2022 and it's 2020. So Greg Berhalter's tenure may end up being known for the hold he put on Mexico, especially because of all the uproar, and I think rightly so, about Tata Martino not even getting the chance to be a real part of the discussion when he wanted the U.S. job. So I think this is a very big game for the coach. I feel like we've said that a lot. and
Yeah.
I feel like we mentioned that an awful lot, but the fact of the matter is, and I wrote something about this at ProSoccerTalk.com, the team and the talent has given us hope.
Sure.
Big games, he's given us hope. But that's all we have. We still don't have a consistency of play, a philosophy, a thought that he's going to put the absolute best players out there. So this is huge for him. Getting to a World Cup is obviously the thing here, because when you consider how big of a failure not making it would be, I can't even put words to that.
I mean, Andy, Nick mentioned it there. Mexico kind of struggled through qualifying as well. It's not like they're at their best and they're trying to work out and get the best out of Jimenez and other star attackers. I mean, this is not a bad time to play them, right? And kind of go and get your first win, because they haven't been the Mexico of previous World Cup qualifying cycles where they've blown teams away at home. So there's a chance here.
Yeah, there is. I also think that one factor of it is CONCACAF is improving as well, and Canada becoming what Canada has become during this cycle. I think has made it a little bit more difficult, and it just kind of it frames the CONCACAF hierarchy just a little bit differently when it's been either U.S. Mexico or Mexico U.S. for the last, I mean, again, 20 years, basically going back to the 2002 World Cup. It's just been a back and forth between those two. So, it can be, I think, a little bit discouraging at times watching the U.S. and probably for Mexico fans as well to see them not dominate quite the way, continentally that they used to do. But I think it's going to make both of them better in the long run as well. The fact that they face a little bit stiffer competition on the regular just to get to the World Cup in competitions like Nations League and the Gold Cup. So, you might take a few bruises right now in this period. But I think, and especially for the U.S., given the age profile of this team and the experiences, again, that these players are getting and they will have to lean on later into their career, I think it's going to be a really, really crucial time for certainly the U.S., probably both of these teams as well, just in terms of what the development of the program is going to be. Because the U.S., few years now, probably ahead on turning over the roster, turning over the player pool, and moving on to a new generation, as Mexico is kind of half in, half out on the old generation and the new generation. So this might be the last time we see Mexico at a peak power for a couple of years, because then they have to kind of undergo that rebuild. And so this might be their last opportunity to really get one over on the U.S. for quite some time.
Wow. Nick, I'm looking at the key battles and the squads and the rosters ahead of this game. Who are we looking at here? There's some key areas, right? Raul Jimenez against Zimmerman and Robinson at centre-back. And in midfield, Hector Herrera against Tyler. Herrera was brilliant for Atletico in their recent win away at Manchester United in the Champions League. And then down the one wing, there's the possibility of Pulisic against Jesus Corona. Tecatito, whether he plays in a more advanced role, that's going to be a heck of a battle down that side. So there are great individual battles wherever you look over the pitch. But like DaMarcus Beasley told us, sometimes there's not a lot of great individual play in these games, right? It's all about beating the man opposite you and getting the better of them on the day. And the team that does that most around the pitch will probably win the game.
Yeah, who's going to make the meanest face that gets caught on camera, right? We've got the Matt Miazga story from before, and everybody can remember in a different scenario, Clint Dempsey. I have to look at that Zimmerman Robinson versus Mexico's entire attack and bring the fullbacks into this discussion as well. And the reason for that is that I look at the decision. Again, no one's making out John Brooks to be an absolute superstar, but leaving a Champions League caliber player at home, one who's going to have a bidding rights for his services this summer because he's announced that he's leaving Wolfsburg and that he wouldn't sign a new deal that they offered him. Again, I think that's the boldest move we've seen. And it'll be very interesting to see how those guys hold up. Miles Robinson has been fantastic. But even beyond the Brooks question, look, Chris Richards is still coming back from injury, and that's why he's not there. He has been exceptional. And Joe and Andy, we talk, I think most of it tends to be off camera, about how we haven't seen this USMNT team because of the structure of European competition now and international competition. We haven't seen them against very, very good teams. So seeing Zimmerman and Miles Robinson against Mexico is... I mean, it's a litmus test, let's be honest, of how we feel they might be able to do as a pairing in bigger games.
Andy, how worried should we be then about the US men's national team bigger picture heading into these final three qualifiers? Because the injury situation, it is not good. Matt Turner's out, Weston McKennie's out for the season, Sergino Dest pulled out, and then we had the Brendan Aronson fiasco, he's out. So there's, 4 starters right there that you would say would be starting away in Mexico. and the US has to do without it. So what kind of impact will that have on this very young team and very inexperienced team?
Yeah, the first 20 minutes, again, to kind of go back to something that DaMarcus told us, those first 20 minutes are a bit of a whirlwind in these games, and it always plays out like that on the field. You can always tell, and so I think that's going to be a very worrisome time without those 4 starters, because it's not just 4 starters; it's 4 pretty crucial and pivotal players for this team. And Brendan Aronson is the only player in the pool to have appeared in all 11 World Cup qualifiers thus far. He's going to miss the final 3. Christian Pulisic has missed a lot. Gio Reyna has missed essentially the entirety of World Cup qualifying. And Brendan Aronson, at times, has almost carried the U.S. men's national team attack and gotten them over the line in games where it was looking like it might be a draw, and he turns it into a win, or a loss turned into a draw, and you steal a point. So I'm very worried about that one. Obviously, you've got Pulisic and Reyna coming back into the team, and hopefully Pulisic with some pretty good form can take up some of that attacking mantle that Aronson has carried. But the midfield worries me as well, because Weston McKennie has ascended to a new level that I think we all hoped that Weston McKennie would go to, but we weren't exactly sure that he would get there for a number of factors. And I think going to Juventus being one of them, it was either going to be a make or break moment for him. He was either going to get lost at too big of a club, or he was going to really raise his level and succeed there. And that's exactly what he's done. So I'm really going to miss him. And Matt Turner as well. Zach Steffen has been injured throughout for most of the World Cup qualifying cycle. That's why Matt Turner became the de facto number 1. So there's a lot of questions that Greg Berhalter is, I think, probably going to be losing a little bit of sleep over these next couple of days as he goes through with his coaching staff and tries to piece together not just what the 11 is going to be, but how are they going to be able to play cohesively as a group, given that many changes with that many key members out of the team.
I'm going to be slightly controversial here. Ultimately, should the USA just forget about this game and say, you know what, it's tough. It's at the Azteca. It's against Mexico. The main focus here is beating Panama at home in Orlando, and that pretty much gets the job done to qualify for the World Cup. I know there's some mathematics involved there, and you have to get the calculators and abacuses out and all sorts. But basically, if you win against Panama at home, then you're pretty much in the World Cup. Nick, should that be the focus? And maybe some of the guys who might not be in the strongest lineup for the US should play in Mexico? No, you don't think so?
No.
Why not?
No, what's this? No. Like this is nobody can do the shake like we do. I can't hate that more, and I'll tell you why. We have to have a bigger mentality than that if we want to be a team that succeeds at World Cups. First and foremost, the talent pool is deep enough. We have seen we've seen US B teams beat Panama at home. So to show Panama that respect is also something. Oh, do you see that the US has put so much focus on this game that they didn't even try against their supposed hated rivals? I just can't hate it more. We need to start acting like a real soccer team. I'm tired of, we're going to invite this team that we should beat anyways into 4-degree weather and make the fan base all live in hypothermia. I'm just done with it. It is such a little league mentality. And sometimes we see, if I'm going to be critical of I don't know if I want to go as far as to say the Federation, but I will say it with Berhalter, the defensiveness at even the most slightly askew question. It's good to have a chip on your shoulder. It is not good to be that, it just doesn't vibe with me when you've got players on Champions League teams and you're acting like you're in this startup league, which, relatively speaking, I get it, but even MLS has just destroyed where they should be in terms of passing things. The evolution of that league is amazing, and I just want us to act like our FIFA rankings are true. That's all I want to see, and that means you're playing your rival away, and you're expecting to get something.
Andy, you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely, and I think that, again, I'll go back to the experiences that will be gained from a game like this. Going down to Mexico, playing a friendly, as I think probably a lot of players on this squad have done over the last handful of years. That's one thing, but you go in there in World Cup qualifying, and the fact that it's one of the final 3 games as well, that creates a pressure and an expectation and a demand for a performance like you're going to feel later this year at the World Cup. And so if we can't look at this game against Mexico and say we expect to go down there and get something, then how can we expect to go to Qatar this winter, and say, well, yeah, they'll get out of the group and then they'll make some noise in the knockout rounds if we didn't even feel good enough about them being able to play Mexico and Panama 3 days apart with Costa Rica coming up right after. I'm with Nick. It is a mentality thing. And I think that's one of the things that if you probably ask any former player, and if we could have asked DaMarcus that, I think he probably would have shut it down just as quick as Nick did and saying, anytime we play them, I want to beat them. I don't care what the scenario is. That's the game that when the schedule comes out, you circle it and you look forward to it. And when it gets there, you spend all week anticipating it. And that's what we're doing right now.
Look, let's face it, Mexico, you could put them, let's put it this way. Do you want to be in a position where you're looking right behind you for your second game against Panama? Or do you want to maybe drive Mexico to be more desperate in its following 2 games? The more I talk about this, the more fired up I get. And how dare you, Joe, because there's still days until the game.
Hey, no wonder England haven't won the World Cup since 1966 with that mentality.
At least we've won it. I'm sorry. I had to go there. Sorry. I felt like I poked the bear, though, a little bit there. I didn't expect that that big of a reaction from you guys, because looking at it on paper, I would probably play a more defensive team and just go for a point away at Mexico, and then just,
that's fine too. If
that happens,
I think that's kind of going to be dictated to him given the injuries, and so I think there's a difference between playing a defensive game and the idea of we're not going to risk anybody for this game because we're going to prioritize 100% on the next one.
Yeah, Joe didn't expect it. A little bit like Robert Greene didn't expect Clint Dempsey's shot.
We've talked about this. Let's move on very swiftly. How confident are we then heading into these final 3 qualifiers, chaps? We've talked about this for, it seems like years now, this qualifying cycle has gone on. How confident are we that the US is at a very, very good position heading into the final 3 games and is going to qualify? I'm talking percentage-wise. Are we 100%, 95%? I mean, given what happened last time, we don't need to talk about it again in 2017, but that's still something in the back of most US men's national team fans' minds, I think, when they you know what, something crazy could happen again. But it does feel a bit different now, right? I mean, essentially 5 points seals it, probably even less than that seals it. Nick, give me a percentage chance that the US is qualifying for the World Cup in the next week.
My gut only says 70, but I'm going to bump it up to 85 because I always forget until I see Christian Pulisic in that US sweater how much of a game changer he is, and he's healthy and he's in form right now. And he was out there at age 18 almost dragging them to a World Cup. Remember how good he was in qualifying. That was not on him. And there is no way these guys are going to forget it with him now as a leader of that team in that room. Not that they were going to forget it anyways, but so I'll go to 85%.
85. Andy?
That seems low to me. I mean, we've kind of watched this team grow up since the 2017 debacle, right? Because Pulisic was already in the team, as you say, Nick, and then we knew a lot of the other players coming into the pipeline. So we've like almost micro-watched their careers, micromanaged their careers, every transfer that they've made or rumor that's come up about them, every performance, every injury that they've had, every camp that they've been in or that they've missed. And so it just feels like there is a really big moment coming from this team. And I don't know if that means winning at Azteca and effectively clinching their qualification at that point, putting themselves in a position where it would take almost mathematically would be impossible to not qualify then, or if it's just a couple of really dominant performances to close it out after a result, or maybe even a lot. I don't know what it's going to look like, but 100% this team is going to the World Cup just because they have been building towards this moment. And you can see the progression. If we had played this game a year ago, with that expectation, where those players were in their careers and where Berhalter, I think, was as a coach and where the program was in general, I don't know that I would have felt that way. But we've seen enough through World Cup qualifying when they've been down or they've had their backs against the wall, they've been beaten, they bounce back. They come back really, really strong. And I think they have a defiant mentality to this team because a lot of them have been told, you're not good enough to play at X club, wherever you're going. And then they go out there and they prove that they are. So this is going to be a big week for U.S. soccer. I really, really believe it.
That's a great point because I'm going to go with 95%, by the way. I think it's pretty much done. But it's a great point about the team, watching it grow up and hoping and dreaming what these young star players who've been through academies in Europe or gone there very, very young. I remember being in the tunnel in Genk in Belgium. The USA lost 1-0 to Italy in a friendly. Pulisic was downbeat. You had some of these other young guys in that team, and they just got battered all over the place by England and Italy. They had an interim coach. This was not a good spot for these young players to be in. They've had a lot of growing pains the last few years, and I think they're a lot stronger and a lot more defiant than people think that they are. And I think you're right. Now, when you think about the average age of this team, we're only at the very start of it. So the real goal is the 2026 World Cup on home soil. I still honestly believe that. But getting to 2022 and having a really good showing, depending on what group you get put in, all the rest of it, that's going to be massive for the confidence of this young team. So a huge week coming up for the US men's national team in World Cup qualifying. Final 3 qualifiers, lads. It's all on the line. Let's see if they get over the line. Regardless, if they do or they don't, we'll be having a live show for the World Cup 2020-22 draw from Qatar. We'll be doing the stream live on NBC Sports' YouTube channel over at ProSoccerTalk on NBCSports.com. There's details on how the draw works, when it's happening, all that good stuff. So we'll have you covered. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. We'll be covering the US men's national team and see which group they're in when they finally return to the World Cup. Okay, let's focus now on the Premier League. We have one heck of a title race, lads. A few weeks ago, we didn't have that, but now we have one. It is fully on. Manchester City and Liverpool, they are pretty much neck and neck. Obviously, City have the 1-point advantage at the top of the Premier League table. But this is going to be wild, right? I mean, we're looking at the end of the season here. They meet at the Etihad on April 10th. Yeah. They then play each other in the FA Cup semi-final a week later. And then potentially they could meet in the Champions League final as well. So, Nick, but before we get into the X's and O's and break down who has a better run-in and who has the edge, this has got to be the best quality rivalry in world soccer that we've seen pretty much since Barca, Real Madrid about 8-9 years ago when Messi and Ronaldo were at their prime, right? This is right up there with that in terms of quality of the rivalry.
There's just no question. These are two teams, and the investment joke is 100% meant almost in sort of seriousness. They have put all their chips in. It has been one-upsmanship. I don't think Liverpool spends nearly as much money if they weren't keeping up with they're not Joneses. They're Man City. This is what they're keeping up with. I look at some of the purchases that Liverpool made, and we would hear Jurgen Klopp talk about, well, we don't have that money. We don't have that money. But he then went into his boss's office or got him on the line and said, we need that money if you want to compete. They have spent so much. Man United and Chelsea have too, so it proves system matters too. These are two teams that I think maybe because of the way it happened and that they're not traditional rivalries, we have probably underappreciated how good they've been in the Premier League.
And it's happened over a long, long period of time now. When you think back to even when Klopp first came in, they were, upsetting Man City. There was great games in the Champions League and the latter stages of that tournament. So this isn't a recent thing, is it, Andy? And this has just kind of been building. There's been so much talk, like Nick said, behind the scenes, not even buying players, but battling for the recruitment guys or the analysts. And there's so much rivalry behind the scenes at these two clubs that are not separated by a long distance in England's northwest at all. So it just all adds into the mix and adds into the rivalry. And I just can't wait to get the popcorn out and grab a beer. And I mean, these games going week after week. They could have a Champions League final after these massive games. I mean, what's your personal opinion on this rivalry in terms of maybe where it sits in the Premier League? Because we've had some great rivalries over the years. Arsenal, Man United with Wenger and Ferguson, and obviously Chelsea, and Arsenal, and just so many great rivalries just all over the board. But I think this is right up there consistently as one of the very best.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between a competitive rivalry and either a local or kind of historic rivalry, something that's been going for a long time. And while we enjoy, the fierceness of Derby Day and everything, there is something to be said for two teams that just happen to be perhaps all-time great operating at the exact same time and going against one another. And some, fans of those teams might say, well, it's unfortunate that either us or them, maybe doesn't have the success during that period that they should, because they went up against someone, that was their equal, that matched them in the quality. And so we are the winners from that. The people that get to watch these games week in and week out when they're not playing each other. But then you get the head-to-head matchup that is coming, the possibilities in the FA Cup and the UEFA Champions League that could also be done. Like, it's just it's setting up to be maybe the best couple of months of I guess, Premier League and European and English football that has maybe ever existed, with these two teams being as good as they are. And I like the point that Nick made, kind of one-upping each other, the fact that each one of them at each stage has kind of, looked at the squad and said, okay, we've either got a weakness here or they've got a real strength here that we need to address. And maybe it's just for a couple of games, a season or whatever. But the one spot that hasn't been addressed between the two teams, and we talked about it in the preseason and we've talked about it throughout the season, is the center forward for Manchester City. And I think that's why we're here right now, to kind of put a bow on this before we get into like actually breaking it down, is that's why Man City had, what was it, 9 or 11 point lead just a few weeks ago, and they let it slip away with draws that should have been victories, with a defeat that should have been at least a draw against Tottenham as well. It's just they have dropped points in an uncharacteristic way because they can't put the ball in the back of the net. And I also think it's hurting them a little bit defensively as well. And so I kind of look at it, and I've been the most bullish of the three of us in kind of thinking, I think Liverpool might actually do it.
I think you're right. I think Luis Diaz coming in obviously gives them the advantage, right? The big January signing, it kind of might just push them over the edge. But let's focus on that now. Maybe where, Nick, does Man City have the edge over Liverpool? Is there an area where you'd say they're just going to, in these games that they're playing potentially, or just in the title race, where Man City, this is where I can make my argument that they are going to beat Liverpool and they're going to win the Premier League title? What kind of edge can they get?
I wish we knew if Trent Alexander-Arnold was going to be healthy and at anywhere near his best by then. That's been a real, the X factor of X factors. One of the points I want to make to piggyback on what both of you said is that what we're seeing from both of these teams also, because Pep and Klopp have been there for as long as they have, is players are given time to adjust, to build into the system. If you hire a coach and you're changing him all the time, and I'm pointing directly at Chelsea for this, and maybe Arsenal as well is seeing the benefit of this.
And Tottenham.
Yeah, Tottenham as well. Look, João Cancelo is fantastic. He was not great his first year. Everybody was wondering, well, what was that deal? Why did they bring him in here? But he has worked into the system. Kostas Tsimikas has now become an able replacement when they don't use Andy Robertson, and perhaps he may be a reason that they address that. Even Fabinho, who I think took to it very quickly, has now became a better player. So this is one of the reasons Liverpool maybe can point to next year, is Luis Diaz will be another one embedded. But the picture post, the point I want to make for this, two England players, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Phil Foden. They were brought along slowly. Whenever anybody pointed out well, in Liverpool's case, it was a deficiency, right? Like he can't defend. But Klopp let him work through it. He found a better role for him. Now we're seeing him and Cancelo cut inside more to take away what they do. And on the other side, there's Foden, who everybody kind of said was ready. He's ready. Why isn't he playing more? What? Well, now he's playing all the time, and he has been built for this. And that's the thing, and that's what Arsenal has to do. Maybe we will see Arsenal and Chelsea right in there, finally 4 ways down to the wire, because they're in a system, and we know what we're going to get, and they know what they're going to get.
So you think Phil Foden is that key that he may give?
Yeah, I think he's incredible.
Liverpool in the title race. Okay.
And John Stones has been fine. Ross Barkley became fine. But for every player like that England gave a label to about being, the whatever Messi or the whatever Iniesta, Foden's there. And full credit. I want to give a little credit to Lampard. I remember making jokes about Mason Mount, but he is now becoming as indispensable as well. So we are seeing good development from these clubs.
The Stockport Iniesta, there you go, could hold the key to the Premier League title race. Andy, can you make the argument for Liverpool where they might have the edge over Manchester City?
I think pace is the thing that either of these teams could have on their side. Liverpool obviously want to play at a much higher pace and tempo than Manchester City do. They want to possess the ball, obviously, and they want to look to defend and just strangle the game, strangle the life out of their opponents. Whereas Liverpool, a little bit more, not so risk averse. They're willing to take chances, get out in the open field, play that counterattacking game the way that Manchester City don't quite have the personnel to do. So I think, without trying to look too much specifically at just the one game, the one Premier League matchup that they've got still coming up down the road, that's a thing that I think when you watch Liverpool against Watford or Tottenham, or you watch City against, anybody else, the tempo of the game, the pace that the game is being played at, I think from 2 minutes in can tell you everything about how that game is going to go. And over the last month or so for City, it's been a little bit more chaotic than it has been. It's been teams giving a little bit more space to hit them on the counterattack because they've not been quite as sharp. And if you give an opportunity like that to Liverpool, it doesn't matter which 3 of the 5, brilliant world-class attacking options they have on the field at a given time, they're going to make you pay. And so I just look at that and I see I don't know if momentum is the right word, if form is the right word, but I just think the moment that both of these teams are in right now, Liverpool clearly red hot at 7 or 8 games in a row, straight victories. Manchester City dropped all those points to cough up the lead. It just has a feel like Liverpool, are growing raising themselves to a height that they've not been at yet this season. Whereas with City, it kind of feels like they already peaked. Like maybe it was the first half of the season, and they're going to slowly, and maybe they have been slowly petering out as the season goes on. Because it's a small squad, by the way, and that's one thing. Yeah. It's a really small squad, and Pep has always operated like that. And you would think, well, the money that's available to him at Manchester City, of course, he's going to have every best player in the world. Yeah, he has that in the starting 11. There's only like 5, 6, maybe 7 players that he is, better than reluctant to go to off the bench. And I think over the course of 38 games, that wears on you. And that's not to say that Pep didn't have what he needed. I think that's a function of Pep being Pep.
You know what? The one thing about, I agree with you on most of that with Liverpool. The one thing with them, with that counter-attacking style and focusing so much on it, is they've been at some of the recent games and they have left themselves exposed a little bit on the break. They have given up chances to, West Ham or Brighton in recent games. And where if you give those chances to some of Man City's attackers, they would usually take them. But then on the flip side, Man City's attackers have been not stone cold, but haven't been great either. And I think it's all about those combinations for Manchester City in attack. They still don't really know what 3 or 4 players to play. De Bruyne is going to start against Liverpool. Pretty sure Foden's going to start. And probably Mahrez. But then it's kind of, do you put Raheem Sterling in there to cause Liverpool some different problems? Do you play Jack Grealish, but is he too similar? Then you've got Bernardo Silva buzzing around. And it's just, they've got great combinations in all of those options. But I still don't think he's found the right one. And again, it comes down to, and I think this could be key, the January signing with Luis Diaz. I think he's given Liverpool a confidence that they can rotate players in and out and he can come in and do a job right away. Where I think if you're Man City, you're looking around and you maybe don't have that same confidence in some of their attacking players that are being rotated into the lineup. But what we do know is they're both great teams. Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp are both great managers. They're iconic. They're geniuses. But both are probably going to move on in the next few years. They've kind of hinted at that several times. Once his contract's up, they're going to move on. Nick, do you think this rivalry will still be as intense and as good if those two legendary managers move on? Because you would kind of feel that they'll just bring in 2 other great managers, but they've added to this rivalry as well, right? The respect that those two have and the style of play is so different that it just creates just beautiful chaos.
It does. I guess we don't know what the Gerrard versus Company era is going to look like, but jokes aside, I don't know. I can see Pep staying longer, especially if they land Haaland. Just because that is a next level of galaxy brain for a manager to have the ability. And if the one piece you're working into the equation is the best or slightly second best young center forward in the world, that's pretty good. Can it carry on? The reason I'll say no doesn't have a lot to do with Klopp and Pep. It has a lot to do with, I expect these other giants to get out of their own way. Arsenal seems to have learned a lesson. Tottenham, we'll learn this summer if they're willing to spend to Conte's wishes. But if they do, he's an incredible manager. He wins everywhere, absolutely everywhere. He just burns out. So that's why I expect Man United to figure it out at some point, right? Too much money, too much resources. Sometimes something's got to stick to the wall, right? Yeah. So I guess that's my argument against it, is just I can't see the amount of money that's there in the Premier League and the amount of people and players who want to play in it, not to have an outlier jump into the equation and stick around for a few years.
When we talk about the final months of the season and this particular game at the Etihad on April 10th, Andy, does it all come down to that? Or do we think that Man City have an easier run-in when you look at their games, or perhaps Liverpool have an easier run-in? It looks to me like City have a slightly easier run-in, but I'm not saying they can afford to obviously draw this game at home against Liverpool. But is it just down to this 190 minutes? Because it's going to be that close. We talked about it before a few years ago. 2018-19 season went down to the final game of the season, and then City pipped Liverpool right at the very end. So is it going to be like that? Do you think it's going to come down to this game, or can you see City now maybe dropping more points and Liverpool really surging late in the season?
I think this international break has come at a really, really interesting and maybe even impactful time in the season, given the form that both of the teams were in. I think it gives Manchester City a little bit of time to rest and regroup and maybe refresh some ideas as well to go into the stretch run. And for Liverpool, maybe kills a little bit of that momentum that they have, and they have to come back and reconvene and find that form once again. That's never easy to do, especially when you take the 2 weeks off there in between. So I think that might be a little bit of an interesting thing. I don't think it matters who either of these teams has during the run-in, because if either of these teams are playing at a Premier League title winning level, it doesn't matter who they play, because they will beat anybody on any given day. And so yeah, it probably does come down to when they play head to head. I wish it was maybe a little bit even later into the season, so that we could truly say, hey, this is the title match right here. But I think that the hype that's going to be surrounding that game, we might what if we see one of these teams going into that game and they just get completely overawed by the moment and what it's going to be, and they just fumble it? Like, we could see something. We could either see the one of the greatest games of all time, one of the most hyped and anticipated games that has all of the potential in the world to deliver on the field in a way that we hope that it can. But we could also see something completely the opposite direction, and one of these teams capitulate. So I don't know. Bring on April 10th. I'm ready for it right now. We can skip the World Cup qualifiers. The stress that's going to cause me and you, Nick. We can just get past that. Let's get to this one right now. I'm ready.
I'm ready as well. It's going to be a great end to the season. I'm thinking about the time they met at Anfield earlier in the season. What a great game that was. And I think that was just a taster of what's to come. So I remember on ProSoccerTalk on NBCSports.com, we'll give you all the latest team news, how to watch this great game, how to watch all the other games as well, all the latest analysis and videos and much, much more up at PST. It's a busy time of the year. Champions League, World Cup qualifiers, Premier League, and of course, this incredible title battle between Man City and Liverpool. That is sitting absolutely center stage for us all to enjoy. So, gents, I've enjoyed this today, as always, catching up with you guys at Pro Soccer Talk. An absolute pleasure. Take care. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll speak to you all very soon indeed.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series, and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches, and much more.